Welcome. Today, we're talking to my good friends Chris and Lisa, who have known for several years. They're experts in high conflict divorce, winning custody cases against narcissists, parental alienation, and so much more. I can't wait to get into this power packed episode. So let's get started with restoring resilience. Maybe before we get started, if you guys could share a little bit about how you got into this work. I know that you have your own personal stories of how you got here, just so that the listeners know a little bit more about you.
All right, Chris, you
Well,
want to go first?
yeah, for sure. So I think our name kind of says it all. Been there, got out. Lisa and I met in 2015 in a romantic setting. We had met and started dating each other, and our divorces were going on at the time at different stages, but they were completely off the rails. And we sort of discovered together what we were dealing with, both with difficult personality types on the other side. Our cases were very different, but we kind of figured out what was going on together. And then our next thought was, well, if we're dealing with this, there are others dealing with this. So I think a lot of people in the high conflict space come to it through personal experience. That was certainly the case with us. And then more recently, having, when we first started, sort of the current version of our business 6 years ago, we were really focused on legal abuse because we saw that. We had both lived through that, and we saw that in just about every case we dealt with. But then we started noticing difficulty with kids, with the other parent trying to either sort of more subtly or much more aggressively trying to undermine the relationship between our clients and their kids. And once we saw the pattern, we couldn't unsee it. So it's been a very, very much a growing part of our work on a daily basis for a while now.
Yeah, we noticed that post-separation, we say this a lot, that your ex is limited in ways they can still hurt you to three different things: money, kids, and the court. And we know the court and money go hand in hand, but the kids last the longest and are the most heartbreaking. So in 2023, when our first book came out, we were traveling around and we went to Chicago for an American Library Association conference, and it was in the taxi to the airport that we came up with the idea for the current book, which is called When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You, because we just felt like this was so baked into legal abuse. It was happening in at least 85% of the cases that we had. And if it wasn't full blown, you could see the beginnings of it, even in families where there are really, really young children. And so we thought we have to deal with this in a way that helps parents protect their relationship in the courtroom, but especially out of the courtroom. And the big thing is to catch it early, because when things have gotten really far, which is when most people figure it out, it's a lot harder to go back on. Because it's like we already know this, it's like someone's in a cult and it's now your own child. So it's very, very painful and confusing for everyone.
What you're talking about really is often known as parental alienation. And narcissists, again, historically do this with kids. I don't know any that aren't doing it. So how do you tell the difference between just bad mouthing? Like if you're dealing with you have an ex, a co-parent, and they might be bad mouthing you, versus somebody who is systematically, purposefully trying to alienate your children against you.
Yeah, I feel like you started answering it in your question, like purposefully, consistently, where there's a steady stream of poisonous messages, and they don't have to be verbal. A lot of it is through body language, very subtle, eye rolling, sighing. Even if you are having conversations about your ex, like say you're at a kid's birthday party and your kids are in eye shot and you're like, oh, they can't hear me. They know by your body language what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So even those things that send the message that you are, I call it the three U's: unsafe, unloving, or unavailable. And there's really no positive. It's just constantly like you're a bad parent and you're a bad person. So this happens all the time. Sometimes it settles down when anger subsides, but we know with narcissistic types, anger does not subside. So not all kids are as prone to actually being alienated. That depends on, their bond with the circumstances, the bond, all kinds of other factors. But it's when an alienating parent is placing the child in between a situation where they're put in a loyalty conflict and they are not allowed to love both of you. Remember that we always talk about that black and white thinking. So it's you're with me or against me. So if you love me, you have to hate or discard your other parent.
And I'm wondering, you briefly mentioned some kids are more prone to being able to be alienated and others aren't. I wonder if you guys could talk a little bit more about which type of kids or situations might be more or less prone to being alienated.
Yeah. Chris, you want me to keep going?
Yep.
Okay. So I think that one of the best ways to prevent alienation in children is to teach them critical thinking skills. Kids who have strong critical thinking skills are able to question. They can question authority. They can question a situation. They're just, they're less likely to fall under the spell of an alienating parent. I mean, certainly kids look at both of their parents as authorities, but a child who is an adult in general who has better critical thinking skills and is able to question, and who is it's easier for them to know their own reality, which is still very, very difficult. But I think that in general is a way to prevent it more. Kids who there's a book out there, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called The Sky is Red by Tyra Juliet. It's a children's book, and we've interviewed her, I think, a year or two ago when it came out. And she, it's actually based on a game that people play with children in general, but it's really good for kids in these kinds of situations where a parent will say things like things that are true, and then they'll say something that's a lie, and they want their child to question them. They want a child to learn that, wait a second, that's not true, not just to accept that it's true. And so that's just a simple game to do with little kids, but there's a lot of ways. And I don't know if you know this, Chelsea, I used to be a high school English teacher, and I love teaching persuasive writing and advertising and analyzing media. And it's so much fun to work with kids in terms of like teaching them the ability to question. And especially now, yeah, more than ever, when we've got all kinds of things, like we don't even know what's real anymore.
Yeah.
And it takes so much to, sever or damage the tie, the natural bond that a child has with a loving parent, even if it's a parent that goes to work every day and isn't around much and all that. I mean, we, in a traditional setting, we each enter life with two people who love us no matter what, right? Now, things happen, and in some cases there can be what's called justified estrangement, but that bond is not severed without a very strong force being applied to it, whatever the origin of that force. And that's what makes it alienation, when the origin is the other parent's efforts. And there's a big difference between, we all huff and puff or roll our eyes sometimes, and then we usually, I know when I did that kind of thing, I was like, oops, don't do that. Like, we know how we're supposed to behave. With somebody who's intentionally undermining the relationship, that's almost like a guidebook or a playbook. Like, those are the things I'm gonna do to sever that bond intentionally.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot.
The other thing is that we've noticed that a lot of people unintentionally are doing alienating behaviors. So, for example, one really common thing is for a parent to call a child when they're at the other parent's house and being like, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" Now, that is actually considered a type of alienating behavior, because why wouldn't things be okay? And so when you are saying that to your child, frequently your child starts thinking there must be a reason that I wouldn't be okay. So maybe there's something here that's not safe. So it's considered planting messages into your child's head by saying things like that.
Yeah. And I can see even how a well-meaning, healthy parent would do that unintentionally, especially because you're living in the reality of knowing who that co-parent is. So you
Right.
may have very good reason to be calling, saying, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" But healthy parents also put in a lot of effort to try to create a bond, a relationship between the child and the other parent, and that is what a narcissist is not doing. So if you find yourself having done that, because I know sometimes people hear this and go, "Oh no, am I narcissistic then? Am I like behaving narcissistically?" No, these are just behaviors to be aware of. Because I also think you want to communicate to your child that you are capable. You know, I like the other strategies and tools that you suggested in the beginning of helping kids think critically. Again, we need that as adults too, to be able to think critically about things. But even question, I don't say question authority, but know that just because somebody is in a power position or an authority position, they are not necessarily safe. I think that's something a lot of times that we leave out of the conversation. So if you have those kind of conversations with your children, like, these are the qualities of the type of person to look for to let you know they're safe, they're trustworthy, like they're consistent, they care about how you feel. If they do something that hurts your feelings, they take responsibility for it. Those kinds of people, those kinds of adults are safe. And you can, kind of like you said, plant those seeds, but in a positive way of here's the healthy behaviors to be looking for in, that other parent.
Yeah, and,
So,
and Chelsea, sorry, and as you're saying that, the teacher in me wants to flip it to questions. So instead of telling a child, asking, what kind of people do make you feel safe? What are the qualities
yeah,
that make you feel safe, and why? Because then it makes them also think even more, because maybe my type of safety is different from your type of safety, or your friends have different versions of safety, and so it opens up a conversation. And that's another way to help your child, because you want to show your children that you're open to hearing their opinions and their thoughts, and that you're paying attention.
yeah. No, I love that because that goes right to the critical thinking. I mean, it's asking questions to get them to start thinking for themselves instead of just listening to everybody else or, listening to it. I actually realize that I do that a lot with my clients in session. Like a lot of times I will be asking how that made you feel, what you noticed in your body.
Exactly.
Yeah, when do you feel safe? When do you not feel safe? How can you tell? And a lot of times that is how people end up realizing, oh, I think like this is toxic. My body is telling me something because those questions are guiding them to the answers. But you're also teaching them to trust themselves at the same time, which is huge.
Right. And I think the earlier the better with children, because
Yeah.
I didn't learn to think about how I feel in my body until much, much later. So connecting that, like your feelings and where it shows is do you feel it in your throat? Do you feel like you stop
Yes.
breathing? Do you feel it in your stomach? I mean, kids are, just as capable as adults of being able to describe where something hurts.
And a lot of this also it has to do with cognitive dissonance, right? The child loves both parents. That's they're hardwired that way, right? That's natural. But they're getting a message from one that the other's bad, but they're not observing that the other's bad. It's all the messaging, and it's that conflict in their head that's one of the big sources of all the distress and anxiety and the things we witness. And one thing we see all the time is the kid, a child will come back from the difficult parent and be very aggressive and take a while to kind of snap back
Yeah.
to themselves. And our clients will be like, why me? Like I'm the safe, healthy one. Like, why are they coming and acting this way? Well, it's because you're the safe, healthy one, right? They know on some level, I mean, kids absolutely do not have the vocabulary for this, but they know that they're safe with you and the other parent's love is contingent on their behavior. It's conditional, right? As long I have to please the other parent to get what I want, or with the other parent's withholding love and only giving it out when they spy on you or when they say bad things about you. And as things progress, it can get really, really bad. But they're acting out with you because they feel safe with you. But later on, as things progress and that seed, that horrible seed is planted and it flourishes, but then you've got a problem, right? Then the aggression doesn't snap back after an hour or a day. They just adopt that. It's easier for them. As hard as
Yeah.
it is to let you go, it's easier for them to sever that than displease their other parent.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you said that because that confuses a lot of healthy parents. It's very discouraging and disappointing. Like, I'm trying so hard, I'm doing all the things, I'm the safe, healthy parent. I want to be their safe space, and yet they come and I get all the emotions and all the tantrums. And I've told people that as well. They do that, but not because they don't love you, but because they're not afraid of you. They're not afraid of you stepping back and not loving them if they get angry, if they get frustrated, if they have tantrums. Sometimes they can be on their better behavior with that unhealthy parent because the unhealthy parent will give them the silent treatment, will withdraw from them, will neglect them, and they know that. So a lot of the kids' behaviors are because of fear, not because of lack of love.
There's survival skills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're making me think of something that we also see a lot, and that's a sense of betrayal. I think Chris alluded to making the kids betray your trust or encouraging them to, the other side encourages them to be little spies. And when that happens, it can feel like this tremendous betrayal. Like I just said, we had a client, she has a few kids, but one of her kids has special needs and is a teenager. And so our client is female and makes more money than her ex and has to pay him child support. So one day her daughter, or she was on a phone call with her boss, and her daughter was eavesdropping and then heard her talking about money and went and reported to her father, "Mom's making more money. I think mom's getting a raise." And so our client's ex filed again. He's always filing to try to get more child support. And so when her daughter came back to her, she said, "Why would you do such a thing? Like, why are you not only eavesdropping, but why would you tell your father something like that? Because you know there's all this conflict." And her daughter said, "Mom, that's the only time he pays attention to me, is when I talk about you."
That's big. That is really big. So sometimes kids are doing something that feels like a betrayal because it's the only time that they get seen by that toxic parent.
Right.
I hope that the healthy parents can really hear that because I have heard that from so many clients. I'm so glad that you shared that story of and I think we've been talking about, the impact that this often has, this kind of alienating behavior has on the healthy parent. There's confusion, there's heartbreak, there's, that sense of betrayal, of disappointment. I think what I'm hearing or what I'm taking out is that kids do naturally want they want a relationship with that parent, with you. And so sometimes we just need to know that, they really do want to be able to connect with you. They might just not feel safe to right now. But I also hope that encourages parents to just I often say a lot of parenting is just planting seeds. And you're planting the good seeds. You don't always see where it's going or you don't know how it's growing, but you just those moments of connection with them, showing up for them, being consistent for them. What other things do you guys suggest parents do, healthy parents do, to try to plant those good seeds of connection with their kids?
Can I start with a don't do this, like avoid?
Sure.
That's what I was going to do.
That's the don'ts.
Well, I hope it's not the same one, but a lot of parents, very understandably, feel like they need to correct the record,
Yeah.
right? So your kid says something, it's not true, and you go and you turn it into a debate, like you're right, you're telling the truth. But your kid doesn't want to hear that. They don't want to be told the other parent it's not me that's awful, it's the other parent that's awful. Your kid doesn't want either of you to be awful.
Right.
So it's more about, it's not about correcting the record, but almost like coming at it from a different angle, like Lisa was talking about. You're just talking about what the characteristics are, talk about their feelings, like kind of go at it from the side, not head on. You're not going to win a battle of wills with a narcissist who is, that problem took a lot of effort and time to set in motion, and it takes a lot of effort and time to reverse it, depending on when you catch it. But it's not by taking them on head on.
Yeah, I was going to say being really aware of the types of behaviors that narcissists and other difficult people do when they alienate is very, very helpful, because then you can almost put a little distance when something is predictable and you can even be like, oh, here it is. So, for example, we know that your children are going to come back and say terrible things about you and basically parrot what the other parent is saying. And so, like Chris said, your instinct is to be really upset and think, how could they be saying these things? And I feel like my child is my ex that I got away from, and now my child's turning into the same thing. So you get really scared. But realizing that it is a child and there's reasons for this. So there's a term called abuse by proxy, which is your child is being put in a situation where they're hearing something from your ex, they're repeating it, and then they're looking to see your own reaction to it. So let's say they say something really triggering, you get upset and say, that's not true, blah, 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 blah. That's doing several things. So first of all, the child is often reporting back because your ex is saying, like, what did mom say, or what did dad say when you said that? The child is getting an inordinate amount of power that they shouldn't have and being stuck in the middle. And that's frightening for kids. Even though it feels good at the moment, it's like, wow, I made my other parent cry, or I made them really, really angry. So they're being rewarded by the ex. But the other thing is, children think that authorities, the two of you, are both telling the truth. So when they hear one message from one parent and then you say, no, 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 this is what it really is, you're actually doing the same kind of behavior as your ex. You're telling your child what to think. And they don't know who's lying. I mean, maybe they do, but it's putting them in a precarious position because they have to realize one of my parents is lying to me and both my parents are supposed to love me and nobody's supposed to lie. So they can't really deal with that. So instead of trying to correct the record, like Chris said, you can come at it from the side. And I think about like a yin and a yang, the symbol, where like instead of coming back at them and saying, no, 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 to kind of bend and say, wow, you sound really upset or whatever it is based on the comment, and say, tell me more. Yeah. So your main thing is you have to be self-regulated. You have to understand that this is stuff that a child doesn't understand what's going on. They're being used as a pawn and their job is to make you react. So almost like we train people in court how to be a good witness. It's like, this is what to expect and brace yourself for it instead of just being triggered in the moment. Understanding that child is a victim also, and they're going to be coming at you hard, but it doesn't mean that it's real. This is part of the whole thing. And sometimes getting them talking about it, like, why would you say something like that? Or, wow, I didn't know you felt that way. Tell me more. They won't be able to have much more to say because they're parroting the other person. And it also is showing your curiosity and focus on their feelings. A line that I think I wrote a while ago that I heard somewhere, I forgot, is that there's often heartbreak under that hostility because they're really suffering. They don't, they're going through a lot as well, and they don't know what to do and how to stay safe in these situations. And so realizing that hostility has a lot of sadness underneath.
This really highlights the importance for survivors to be doing, we have to do our own work. We have to do our own healing, or it's going to be really hard to show up in this regulated way. I think trying to co-parent with a narcissist is one of the most challenging things because the court, other people, everyone is expecting you to engage on a regular basis with your abuser, with the person who perhaps cheated on you, betrayed you, lied, manipulated for years or decades. And then as soon as you're out of the relationship, everybody expects you to get along, put on a happy face for the kids, like you're supposed to just go on and act like this, like now you just have to be the most regulated, balanced person. And it's really hard. And I think one of the greatest shames that I have seen when working with clients is when they are triggered by their own children. Mm-hmm. Or when their child is reminding them of their ex and they find themselves like having that icky feeling even toward their own child because their child is behaving in ways that their ex did.
And they're terrified. They're terrified my kid is turning into my ex.
And kids that developmentally, there are stages when kids act like narcissists.
Yeah.
And it's normal. It's not a sign that they were on the wrong trajectory. And for whatever reason, We tend to see it clustered around age 14. It tends to be like the time, like the witching hour of
Oh
kids in
gosh,
these
yeah.
situations. It could happen any time, but 14 seems to be where, like, oh my gosh, that's
Like really
the
bad.
worst. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the age that narcissists are stunted to. They swing between toddlers and teenagers, throwing temper tantrums and acting defiant like a teenager. So it does make sense. There's like complexities here because there's what your child is going through that what you would be dealing with regardless, but then it's just turned up like a lot because that narcissistic ex is also like weaponizing that child. So you've got some great tips on how it feels to go through that as a parent, what your child might be going through. Do you feel like there's anything that we have missed that you guys just run into over and over again that you want every parent, if they have to deal with this kind of situation, to know?
Well, I mean, we've got 220-ish pages of them.
That's right.
No, the one thing, the biggest thing, and we talk with people about this all the time, is the one thing you can never do is give up. Right? You just, like, your child is awful, awful, awful. You just, the day that you say, I'm done, they're bad, like the child is bad, and you hold the child accountable. I mean, I'm not talking about accountable for breaking. I'm talking about
Yeah.
like I don't want this relationship because they don't want it with me. That's what cements the victory for the other side. You just need to be persistent. You never give up. Recognize that you are dealing with a victim. That child has been manipulated the same way you were in the relationship, and they have even less defenses to protect themselves than you had. And, you still, fell for whatever it was about that person. So have sympathy and don't give up.
Yeah, that's huge. I always want to leave people with a message of hope. And what you guys were talking about earlier of don't correct the record. If we think about our own journeys of healing from narcissistic abuse, if somebody came to us, as perhaps they did, and said, your spouse is this, this, and this is why you shouldn't marry them, and this is why they're not good for you, like how effective would that have been? At some points in our healing, we too were like completely, I can't see that because you were still attached, because you were still in the relationship, you still had hope, you still wanted it to work because of the coercive control, of course, threats, intimidation, humiliation narcissists are using to keep you stuck. And the concept of betrayal blindness, like it's really hard to see the betrayals that are happening in a relationship with someone you love. If you were married to them, you perhaps created a family with them, you intended to be with them for the rest of your life. So you have to grieve so much before you can even fully recognize what you're in, before it's safe, like before your brain will allow you to see the betrayals. You have to be ready for that because it's heavy. And so I always remember that too, like thinking about your child, how heavy would it be for them to see at whatever their age they are right now, that their parent is narcissistic, that their parent is fundamentally unsafe, that their parent really isn't capable of unconditional love, that their parent is using them as a pawn. Like these are such heavy things that your child is going through. So to your point, Chris, you also have to give it time. You have to give it space. Like you have to keep investing in them, keep being consistent with them, keep showing them what a healthy parent and person looks like, because you don't know ultimately what's going to help them drop that wall of betrayal blindness and finally really see the parent for who they are.
Yeah, and I know we're going like very, very top level here just because it's such a detailed thing, but I remember I was reading about a conversation a kid was having with their healthy parent. The healthy parent's like, well, why don't you try this? Or the healthy parent, of course, is like, I want you to see what's happening. And the kid's like, it doesn't matter because you don't have to live with that person. You're away. I have to go live with them still. I have to go back and forth. And that's what it's like for children. So we think about the things that they do that we can't understand. They are fawning. They're doing whatever they can, like you said, Chelsea, to be safe. And sometimes we don't understand it, but kids that do pull away from one parent, it's highly likely because of alienation. It's highly likely that they come back. Often it happens when they are physically out of that other parent's presence. So kids who go away to boarding school or to college, usually in their early to mid 20s, that's when they start coming back. And we had a client, she did this amazing thing that she didn't know what she was doing, but it ended up being the right thing. So she had two teenagers who had both been alienated from her for about 4 years. And her son, who was the older one, went off to college. And so she took a chance and she moved for a while to the area where he was going to school. And she did what she called a month of lunches. So she said, college kids have no money and they need to eat. So every day she would somehow get in touch with him and say, hey, do you want to go to whatever little restaurant? And he gradually started going and they reconnected. And then we know that that kind of influenced his sister. He influenced his sister to give their mother another chance. And now his sister, he's a young adult, he's on his own, but they've repaired the relationship and his sister lives full time with the mother. So yeah, they both are young adults now. And she never thought that it would happen. Both kids for years, she had no money to fight it. You know, she felt like she was getting nowhere with the courts. And we have a lot of stories like that amongst our own clients. And also we know a lot of alienation people who are like, yeah, they see it happen a lot too. But it just feels like during the time that it's never going to change and it's never going to get better. But it often does. It often does. But think, like Chris said about not giving up, if you give up, you're basically sealing the message that your ex is giving to your kid, that you are unavailable, unsafe, or unloving because you didn't make that effort anymore. And I know I've interviewed Dr. Amy Baker, and she's like very prominent in this space. And she told a story about how a woman that she worked with who was an adult alienated child was talking about how after her parents divorced, her father was supposed to come and get her on the weekends. And every weekend he'd come and he'd knock on the door, and her mother, and I think some other family members would be there, and they would kind of be jeering at him outside the door. And they were like, we're never going to open the door. You're not going to get her. I don't know how they got away with this, but she didn't let the daughter see the dad. And so the dad, after a while, just stopped coming because he just couldn't see her. And she said that she always felt haunted because she felt like he gave up on her, because even though he couldn't see her, that knock she waited for every single week.
It's huge.
So when you think, oh, you know, my child's a monster, he or she is treating me so awfully, that's probably what they're feeling inside.
Yeah.
Like, where
And
are
you know,
you?
as you were sharing about that, it made me think too how a lot of narcissists will claim that the healthy parent is alienating them.
Always.
Oh,
So I know that's why even this like term parental alienation kind of has a history with it, and it gets thrown around the wrong way because narcissists are constantly saying, oh, they're alienating me. Well, you're not alienating your child if the child simply just doesn't want anything to do with the narcissist because of how that parent is. That's not the kind of alienation that we're talking about. We're talking
right.
about systematically.
That's estrangement. That's
Yeah, it's called justified estrangement. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason the child's withdrawing is because of the actions of the other parent, not the actions of a parent who's undermining that relationship.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. So justified estrangement, very different than systematic alienation of it.
And that's really, since, the elephant in the room when it comes to alienation, why it's such a polarizing term is how it's misused in abuse cases, right? Where there is let's take a case where fictional, right? Where there's one parent is doing something abusive to the kids, and the protective parent steps up and says, hey, Your Honor, that parent needs to be on supervised visitation because they're doing X, Y, and Z. Well, if you fail to prove X, Y, and Z, then the other side comes back and says, see, it never happened. You're just trying to destroy the relationship. You're alienating. And I had that experience myself in my own case. This is long before Lisa and I really ramped up our business, where I switched attorneys early middle of my divorce. And in my first meeting with this new, top shelf, I thought I just needed the best lawyer, right? So I hire this very expensive, very highly regarded lawyer. In the first meeting, he says, is your ex claiming abuse? And I said, no, she's not. And he said, well, don't worry. If she does, we'll just reply with alienation. And I'm sitting there, I knew way less. This is almost a decade ago. And it didn't seem right. Something seemed wrong, but it's that much ingrained in the family court system that the automatic response to claims of abuse that falls short, especially, is alienation. And that's why because it's misapplied, intentionally misapplied. I'm not letting lawyers off the hook.
Yeah.
They're using it as a weapon when it shouldn't be used, and it's hurting legit cases. And it's got this, the whole community up in arms about parental alienation is bad, is wrong. Well, we agree it's wrong, but it is valid as a legal argument, and it does happen. Like, it is a real thing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Chelsea, you said like all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely it is. But it's like, it's this kind of crazy making cycle where something's misunderstood and then it gets blown up and then it gets misunderstood because it's blown up and then everybody's like, we shouldn't use it at all. And then people are like, why aren't we using this term years later? So,
Yeah, hey, I've really got that problem over here. Like, I know you don't like the word, but what should I call it? Because I'm living with it.
right, exactly. Same thing about narcissists. I mean, I hear that all the time. Like, we shouldn't be calling people narcissists. Oh, everybody's a narcissist. It's just blown up these days. Well, the misuse of the term doesn't negate the fact that there are absolutely millions of narcissists and we shouldn't be talking about it.
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah, it's so important that we clarify what we are talking about here. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Always enjoy talking about, well, these are heavy topics, of course, but I do hope that people really are able to take so much from it, as I'm sure that they will, and know that they are not alone and that there are strategies to deal with this. I think people feel so hopeless and just desperate to figure out what can I do, and there are strategies, as I'm sure you talk about very in detail in your book. So where can people find that, find you, connect with you guys?
Super easy. So the book is on Amazon. It's called When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You. And you can find us like super easily because we're just Been There, Got Out. Our website's Been There, Got Out. Our podcast, YouTube channel, Been There, Got Out. First book is also Been There, Got Out. What else, Chris?
That's, if you can't find us, there you have other issues.
The internet's broken because you guys are everywhere.
Yes. And it's
time
just the
for,
two of us that we always answer. And our emails are Lisa at and Chris at BeenThereGotOut.com.
Wonderful. Well, I have recommended many people to you. I will continue to do so. And thank you guys so much for all that you do. Once again, I want to thank Chris and Lisa for providing so much powerful information and encouraging us not to lose hope, even while navigating these difficult situations. And I want to remind all of you that no matter where you are in your healing journey, resilience can be restored, and we're going to keep building it together. I'll see you in the next episode.